Hello, fellow video gamers. I come to you today with Nintendo Switch 2 updates. Yeah, anyways. So this is by a channel called Sunbrodation. I came across this and I have not watched it yet, but I have heard some interesting news come out around Nintendo Switch 2. And while my first video talked about how I was not too excited about it, I have since become pretty excited about it. And initially, I did not try for Nintendo Switch 2 pre order, but now I am kicking myself in the arse trying to find a pre order, and it's not happening. So, yeah, some of the cool and fun, exciting things that I've heard about the Nintendo Switch 2 are that, for one, the digital game cards, which I thought were lame and stupid at first, now my Switch 1 has gotten the update and I see the app where all of my digital purchases have been nicely organized and libraried and how I can share them with others. And I think that they are amazing, even ones that are not downloaded onto my system because I have gotten different Switches over the years. Um, they're still in my account and they still show up, and I can easily find them, and they're not lost in the sea of craziness like they were before. So that's like a huge awesome, and I wouldn't mind buying the digital game cards now. My mind has been changed. Another thing that I've noticed is you can actually initiate with a Switch 2 gameplay. So if a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 has a game, they can play together as long as the Switch 2 initiates shared gameplay, which that's awesome. So this claims that Nintendo Switch 2 just became a better value. So let's start this up and see what he's talking
So it seems
about.
like just yesterday, the entire internet was up in arms and angry at Nintendo with the price point of the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, which many people thought would come in at $399. We, of course, learned that $449 would be the cost for the base.
I don't have any problem with the price point. I actually don't think it's that bad. I think the games have stayed pretty much the same price for many, many years, and it was inevitable that eventually they go up a little. And I think with what you're getting with something like a Switch, the portability of it, and now the upgrade in graphics, I think that the price point is good.
Base console, but then especially around the $79.99 retail price point for Mario Kart World, their big launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2. And while I am not happy about that price increase, I also know the hundreds of hours of gameplay that I will get out of Mario Kart World. It is worth it to me on paper for how much time I'm going to spend in that game, but I understand the discourse and people being upset online at that price increase. Well, we now
Yeah, I just want to say I don't think it's really fair. Of course, there's going to be people upset whenever a console or a game raises a price, but I think that it's like I said, it's inevitable. Eventually, games can't stay $60, $70 forever. They're going to have to go up eventually, and essentially for the last, I don't know, off the top of my head, what, 15 years, they pretty much stayed the same. So I don't think it's that bad that some of the games are going up, and not even all of them are. Um, I know I mentioned in my first video that I thought that it was kind of crazy that they were going up, and since then I've had some thought about it, and I honestly don't think it's that crazy considering this is one of the most popular Nintendo titles of all time. I think it's the bestseller that they have across consoles. So I don't think that that's that crazy when they have so much demand for the game to up it a little bit, especially since we know with Mario Kart games, there's most likely going to be ongoing years of DLC and extra support, right? That's not been promised yet, but I would assume that's probably going to be the case.
have a question on the table, which is, did the Switch 2 just become a better value in the current gaming environment we find
This
ourselves
is what I want to
in
hear.
2025?
I want to know
And
why.
that may be an astounding yes, because a big partner and at the same time competitor to Nintendo, Microsoft and team over at Xbox have announced officially an across the board price increase. We are talking every series
Oh, yeah.
consoles, S, X, and the all digital Series X, in addition to their first party games also seeing an increase in price point. And I want
See, I think that Nintendo is probably, they're game developers. they're software and hardware developers. They know, they have inside information that we all don't have. And I think it was only a matter of time before these prices went up. And they probably knew the prices were slotted to go up. And so they just jumped on board with that. They'd be crazy not to, honestly.
I want to have a broad conversation with what the landscape's going to look like, considering we are talking about consoles getting more expensive mid-generation, not less expensive. Also have a check.
I just want to add in there a little bit to make this more like, duh, obviously. The reason why game prices and hardware prices have to go up is because, you know, there is inflation, and people are getting higher wages because they have to afford their gas to get to work, and then the consoles that make these systems, they have to procure the hardware, and then they actually have to make a profit when they sell it. And I think it's pretty obvious they can't keep the games and the hardware at the same price just for that reason, right? If it's going to cost the companies more to actually make the hardware, you can't expect them to take the loss, right? Or they're not going to be making the games. What would be their incentive if they're not going to be making a profit? So I think it's only right.
In conversation on that with the Switch 2, because Nintendo, you might remember in their own wording, did say that they cannot rule out a price increase depending on what happens with the tariff situation, and discuss Microsoft's business strategy from here and their spot in the gaming landscape as a whole, because they are already struggling to sell consoles. Now they have this price increase, and we have some interesting reports suggesting that they're top publishers on other platforms, not their own. And we have some exact comments from Phil Spencer about how he plans to handle supporting Nintendo Switch 2. So there's a ton of info to unpack in this video. Before we get on the same page with all of that, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And doing so will indeed enter you into a Nintendo Switch 2 giveaway that we will be revealing the winner after we
Yeah, that's something that I just want to also mention. There's a lot of Nintendo YouTubers who have secured extra Nintendo Switch 2s. So if you're somebody that maybe doesn't have the money to get one, and maybe you have the money and you can't find one, go around to a lot of these Nintendo YouTubers and kind of listen to them, because I know they're doing a lot of giveaways. I think what's his name, Beat 'em Ups is also doing one, and there was another guy I saw earlier that was doing one, but I can't remember what his name is now. But yeah, just search it up and yeah, check it out. You might secure one that way if you're lucky.
Cross the 90,000 subscriber mark on the channel. So with that, I want to first kick off this conversation right over at The Verge, where they have the exact breakdown of what Microsoft just announced, where it says Microsoft is raising prices on Xbox consoles, controllers, and games worldwide. Microsoft is raising prices of the Xbox Series S and X consoles, controllers, and even some new Xbox games around the world. Starting today, Microsoft says it has adjusted its recommended retailer pricing for its Xbox consoles and controllers, with Xbox Series X being bumped by $100 to $599.99. Microsoft is also planning to adjust the price of some of its first-party Xbox games this holiday season up to $79.99. Microsoft's Xbox Series S 512GB model is moving from $299 to $379, a price hike of $80. The Xbox Series 1TB model is moving to $429, and the Xbox Series X Digital Edition will now be priced at $549, with the 2TB Galaxy Black Special Edition model an eye-watering $729.
Yikes.
It's more than the PS5 Pro, guys. Think about that. Xbox wireless controllers and headsets are also having their recommended retail price adjusted in the US, with the base controller moving to $64.99 and the Xbox wireless headset now at $119.99. You can already find both of these accessories at this type of pricing right now. Okay, so some new Xbox games are moving from $69.99 to $79.99 this holiday, in a move that matches the more expensive pricing of Nintendo's top Switch 2 launch title. And they say titles, there's only one game that's been revealed at $79, but you better bet Mario and Zelda probably also coming in at that price point. Xbox Game Pass pricing will remain the same though, and that's for now because subscription services are known to go up. But let's talk about
one thing this makes me think of is I haven't seen what the new Nintendo Online prices are going to be. I know I have an account right now with Switch 1. If I get a Switch 2, it'll probably still be active at that point, and I wonder if I'll have to pay extra to keep it or to renew it, or if it's just going to stay the same, because that's kind of a big deal too, right? Yeah.
just as a whole, how this affects Microsoft and their position within the market. We already know that they're having a hard time actually really even competing directly against PlayStation in terms of console sales, and even Nintendo for that fact. Like, they have definitely fallen off as far as their actual base console sales go. Phil Spencer even kind of just chucking it up to basically losing the wrong generation with the Xbox One when gamers were building out their digital libraries in podcasts and things like that. He's just kind of straight up more or less said that, yeah, we're in a position now where we're not going to be the market leader on hardware, but we're going to try to put our games on as many different devices as possible. And we are definitely seeing them shift to that, as you can also see headlines like this over at VGC, where it says Microsoft was the top publisher on PlayStation Store by pre-orders in Q1 20.
That's the thing, and now I'm seeing that with a lot of different games that are coming out. So PlayStation and Microsoft, they very rarely now have exclusive games that are just on their consoles, and they're moving more toward trying to get out their software on as many different consoles as they can. But the outlier here is Nintendo. You don't see Mario or Zelda anywhere else, and you're not going to, as long as they're as popular as they are right now. You're slotted to see Nintendo holding on to those babies tight.
2025, gaming revenue is up for Microsoft year on year, but hardware revenue is down. So hardware revenue is down, gaming revenue's up, but that's coming from the competition. People are actually getting games like Indiana Jones, The Great Circle, Doom, The Dark Ages, Oblivion Remastered, and all of like the in-house Xbox Studio games. They're going to PlayStation 5 in truckloads of pre-orders. So this is something that we know, of course, they will support Nintendo Switch 2 with many of these games as well. And we'll get into some of Phil Spencer's comments directly on the Switch 2 in a moment.
Yeah, this is one of the things that has gotten me really excited about Nintendo Switch 2. When I started hearing about all of the other publishers that are going to start releasing games on the new console, I was like, what? You know, this isn't just about Donkey Kong anymore, guys. They're going to release Cyberpunk, they're going to release Yakuza, they're going to release so many titles, and I'm actually kind of getting excited about it, because the thought of having them portably on my next vacation is a really, really spicy looking probability. So I'm hoping that I can get my hands on one.
But they're in a very interesting position to be pushing through a price increase on their consoles and games, because while the games portion does sound like that would be something they would do, they're already struggling to sell hardware, and now it's going to be that much harder to sell that same hardware that already is not selling very well. But then you do have that second thought at $80 games. Of course, you could argue that for Microsoft, that does enhance the value of Game Pass for now, provided there's not a big price increase coming around the corner. But we also have gaming rental services being back in headlines, where Wario64 actually is talking about GameFly subscription prices have increased for new and returning accounts starting today. And obviously GameFly knows that services like what they offer, where you can rent and return physical video games, actually looks a lot more attractive now. So they are talking about the one disc plan going to $19.95 a month plus tax, and the two disc plan going to $27 a month. And you have some higher ones besides that, but
that's pretty cool. I mean, I never really thought about GameFly still being a thing, because I can remember back when Netflix, like way back in the early 2000s, started doing that whole renting thing before they became an online streaming service. You know, they talked about GameFly also renting things out. Actually, I kind of feel like even though they are seeing an uptick in subscriptions, I think as we see more games going digital, there's going to be fewer and fewer services like this. I don't think it's going to be too many more years before they're out of business.
Game rentals is being brought up in the conversation because of the landscape of gaming right now, and rightfully so, because at that $80 price point, by the time you throw taxes on there, you are almost talking about a $100 purchase for one piece of software, and that's not really a great space for anybody in terms of impulse buys, when many things are in flux right now in terms of their price point and just the cost of living rising year over year. But while I do think the game price increase will definitely help the value proposition of a service like Game Pass, I also don't think that many people are going to go pick up a Series X at that $600 price point that it is now.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Because when you can play a lot of these games, like I said, on different consoles, you're going to wait and get them on Steam maybe, or, you know, some cheaper console. I can't, unless you just have loads of money to burn, I can't see you throwing down that much money.
Priced up to $380. I think this is going to more quickly turn Microsoft into a mainly third-party focused company. And while it was interesting that the Switch 2 came out at that $450 price point, and we were talking about it being similar in price to the PS5 and the Series X, we now have a gap with the Series X, and you also have these price increases hitting PlayStation, but just not in the US as of yet. But PS5 price has risen in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, and this is a recent post, April 13th, in fact, so just last month, that they did announce that their editions of the PS5 console would be going up in those regions. So does Sony...
I just kind of want to throw this in also. It's an observation, something I just remembered from something I had seen earlier too. One of the other things that I think make the Nintendo Switch 2 worth the money, in my opinion, and I'm getting more and more excited about it, is that I'm noticing that a lot of things on the console are going to be built in convenience wise. One of the things I noticed was the Pro controllers on the Switch 2 are going to have built in grip triggers, and I guess that is a premium, right, for other consoles for their hardware. So you have to pay extra to get something like grip buttons. But on the Switch 2, it just comes standard with it. So I feel like Nintendo is kind of going for a premium as a standard. So it's going to be a lot of intuitive and a lot of convenient things are built in straight out of the box, which I think really helps as a selling point for me.
Follow Microsoft and also do that here in the States, and I think that's a valid conversation that could happen. And you have to then look at Nintendo's value proposition, because they are actually launching their next generation at a $450 price point, and their next gen certain first party games, not Donkey Kong Bonanza, that's $69.99, but we're gonna have them hit $79.99. And if that is the norm in the industry, because it seems...
And let's just say that is the norm in the industry, and you might say, well, why didn't Nintendo just keep their prices down? Well, we've already kind of talked about why they have to make more profit somehow eventually, right? But as easily as they could have just made all of their games standard $79.99, something that I thought about after the fact, after my last video, I really started thinking, they didn't just come right out and say all of our games are going to be standard $80. They said we're going to do pricing based on how much we think the game is worth, right? So they're not making them all initially 80. Some are going to be 70, right? So they are trying to keep their prices down where they can. And, I think that's really nice. I think that's nice of Nintendo, because they didn't have to do that, right?
Seems like it's going to happen potentially mid-generation this time, as opposed to waiting for the start of the next-gen consoles and just wait for whatever we find out that the GTA 6 game price is, because I think that's going to be some sticker shock for people as well. Well, at that point, it does quite honestly change where Nintendo sits with their price point in the market, and they may have been privy to some of these increases being around the corner for their competitors. And while 450 and 80 sounded high to us, it was just something that was naturally going to take place in the gaming landscape very soon. And now this could be partly tied to tariffs, and we don't know if Nintendo will also adjust the price of their console due to tariffs, because they're on a...
I don't think they're going to change the price. I think that they're doing everything they can so that they don't. I think that one of the big reasons why they're not going to is because if they adjust the price now, you're going to have certain consumers paying a different price than later consumers for the same product. And I think that that's going to bring down consumer satisfaction, and I don't think Nintendo wants to do that. So I think that they saw what could possibly happen with tariffs. They saw the rumors that are going around, like I said, where other consoles, other publishers are also raising their prices. Nintendo has done that also to keep up with them and to be competitive, but also so that they don't lose too much money. And I think that it's actually smart, and I think that they're actually going to other money-saving routes, like offering the digital game cards instead of the physical things that they actually have to ship through tariffs. I think that'll save them a lot of money, right? Not having to make the game cards.
90-day pause right now that ends in July at some point, and there's really no concrete information of what the percentages are going to look like from a global perspective. And I'm not an economist, so wrong channel for that kind of stuff in terms of the deep dive. But nonetheless, if Nintendo can maintain that $450 price point, which they said they will during the launch window of the Nintendo Switch 2, and if they can keep it past that just for the life cycle of it, that $450 price point for a gaming console does not look like near as much of a sticker shock situation as it did when we first learned about it. And then you can turn around and just play the Microsoft games that are going to be $80 or whatever the case on Nintendo Switch 2 as well, because I then want to highlight some comments from Phil Spencer, which further backs up just how big of a shift this is in the entire gaming industry. Microsoft wants to support Switch 2 and is a big believer in Nintendo, says Nintendo's platform doesn't make Xbox antsy, the best of gaming friends. And you have Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer has been a big proponent of Nintendo over the years. Ever since Nintendo and Microsoft started working together, Spencer has been incredibly kind towards the big N. That support and admiration continues even as the Switch 2 nears release. In an interview with Variety, Spencer was asked about Microsoft plans to support Switch 2 with software. While Spencer was unwilling to share specific details, he made it clear that the company has a desire to bring games over to Switch 2. We've been supporting Switch 1. I want to support Switch 2. Nintendo has been a great partner. We think it is a unique way for us to reach players who aren't PC players, who aren't playing on Xbox. It lets us continue to grow our community of people who care about the franchises that we have, and that's really important for us to make sure we continue to invest in our games. I'm a really big believer in what Nintendo means for this industry and us continuing to support them. And getting support from them for our franchises, I think, is an important part of our future. So the writing is on the wall for Xbox. We've known about this for a long time, but I definitely think that with the mix of these price increases now, you're going to see gaming rental services surge. You're going to see Xbox Series sales continue to decline probably quicker than what they were doing before in terms of their console numbers. I think that those numbers will continue to just fall off. We do know Microsoft is kind of going to
I think that to boost their sales and kind of discourage people from just renting games, I think that in the future, this is just a speculation, Nintendo might roll out something where you get a discount for buying the digital version, instead of the physical version will be full price, and collectors will still go for the physical version, obviously, if they can even get their hands on it, because some games aren't even going to be released in North America with physical copies. But I think that by offering a lower price for a digital game card, um, I think that that'll spur some people just to go ahead and buy the game if they go that route.
launch some kind of new technological leap generation, they're calling it, the biggest technological leap that's happened in console gaming. It seems to me like they may be talking about something to deal with AI and cloud technology, but we really
Oh. This makes me remember one more thing that I heard. One of the other things that is super fun. So basically, the way emulators work, they basically dumb down the console to go back and emulate something from the past, right? So the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't doing that, and that's why it's actually going to have some issues running some of the third-party games and some things that don't have support yet. And I'm sure, as time goes on, if there is popularity with such games, that they're actually going to come out with patches and updates to fix this. But basically, Nintendo this time around is going to be facing this issue of emulation in a slightly different way. So they're going to run all Nintendo Switch games, first gen console, on the Nintendo Switch 2, by using the actual software from Nintendo Switch 2, and it's going to translate the old data in real time to the new hardware. So by doing this, it allows the features that Nintendo Switch 2 has, like the camera feature, and like some of the game share features, to run seamlessly, right? So there's not going to be any craziness there. So if you can actually get the game to boot up and it works well this way, everything, all the features that Switch 2 offers will work on your Switch 1 games. So that's one of the big draws to it also. Rather than, what the Wii U did, was it actually allowed you to go into Wii mode, which was basically a dumbed down version of the Wii U. that allowed you to play the Wii games. So we don't have to uh, look forward to that anymore on the Switch too. But like I said, it's also going to create some problems with some games that aren't quite compatible yet. So hopefully we see some patches for that in the future.
Really don't know what they have cooking for next gen, but I think it's going to be a box you can go through to get from Microsoft, but also not just the place to play those games. And they're going to continue to market Game Pass to PC and on their platform, and they're going to give us probably a lot of $70 and $80 games on PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch 2 from the sounds of things. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of all of this. Do you feel like the gaming landscape where it sits now post this Microsoft announcement that Nintendo is more in line and a better value than it once was on its own, kind of pushing the envelope to $80 games and also doing the $450 retail price point for the console? How do you feel about that price point amongst price increases being announced for competitor platforms mid-generation?
Yeah, right. So if you've made it this far in my video, yeah, let's take his cue, and you can leave some comments down in the comment section. I'm curious to hear what y'all have to say about it. Do you feel like Nintendo is just kind of seeing, the oncoming storm of prices raising and raise their prices to match that? Do you think it's fair, considering that a lot of the other platforms are going to start sending games and things over to Nintendo now, and they wanted their price points to be competitive, right? So they're going to have some lower price points, whereas Donkey Kong's going to be lower, but they're also going to have a lot of their really popular games matching those higher price games. So when you have something like what's that one game called, Grand Theft Auto, when you have something like that eventually come out with a higher price tag, something like Mario Kart, which is Nintendo's biggest seller, or like a new Zelda, right? That's going to be a big deal. When you see something like those come out, are they going to be right up there, kind of showing that they're worth just as much? Tell me what you think about it. Do you like what Nintendo is doing with a lot of their hardware and their software? Do you like that they're doing the virtual game cards? Let me know. And like and subscribe if you made it this far, and I will see you next time. Bye.